Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well today.
Well, hello, good afternoon. I almost said good morning, Lord.
Be sure to check the chat and fill out the form to sign in so we can have a record that you're here. And I welcome everyone to our June HSAC meeting. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. I know we don't have a quorum yet, but I know we will. Looks like people are just coming in left and right, so it won't be long and we will have a quorum. But there's a few things we can do as we get started. And I'll start as always by reading our goals. And that is to finish the job of ending chronic homelessness, prevent and end veterans homelessness, prevent and end homelessness for families, youth, and children, and set a path to ending all types of homelessness. So just as a reminder, if you have, stay on mute if you're not speaking. If you're getting ready to speak, and it's okay to come off mute then, but otherwise, please monitor that. Also, if you have a question, and there'll be opportunities to ask questions throughout the different presentations, please show that you have a question by raising your virtual hand. We will honor those hands first. So just to keep a little bit of lessen the confusion, so please use your virtual hand if you need to ask a question. And we will definitely pay attention to that. We had someone who had signed up for public comment, but I don't think that person is here yet. I don't see her. Sorry, I just had an email from Janine Gordon. Okay, so I don't see that person here. Okay, good. And so with that in mind, I'm assuming we don't have a quorum yet. Melissa's really good at letting me know about that when it happens. So.
That's right. We don't have it just yet, but I'll send you a message as soon as we do.
Cool. Well, then we will skip the approval of the minutes for now, and we'll come back to that shortly. Again, it probably won't take long at all with the way the people keep popping in. But we will move over now to our performance management quarterly report. And for that, we have the chair of the Performance Management Committee, Jonathan Crooms.
Right. There we go. Thanks, Helen. Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Crooms with Durham County Veteran Services and the current chair of the Performance Management Subcommittee here with you today. Delighted to be with you all as always. Our update is brief. We're actually, as a committee, approaching probably the busiest time of year for our work. We have 3 scoring competitions that are upcoming. We have the City of Durham request for proposals competition. We have the North Carolina State Emergency Solutions Grant competition. And then once we get a little bit into early fall, we have the Durham Continuum of Care Renewal Grants competition. So our work the past 3 months has been to get ready for those competitions. And so what we have been doing is going back and looking at the scorecards that we have used in the past and making some tweaks and adopting new ones for these upcoming competitions. The other thing that we have begun work on is the City of Durham Community Development Department has been collecting data that is based on our project performance measures that we adopted last year. And Melissa Hernandez is the one who is heading that up. And we're doing this so that we have data to monitor our performance that's outside of the scoring competitions, because not every project in the continuum participates in those. So it's a way for us to to monitor ourselves overall. Melissa's been heading that up, doing a wonderful job. We have begun our second data collection. She has been working with the projects to collect that data, get them comfortable with the process. And if all goes well, hopefully the current collection data will be posted on the COC website if everything goes well. So it's a new thing we're doing, and should help us keep track better of how we're doing overall. In the coming months, you will certainly be hearing from me and our committee more as we begin those scoring competitions. That's our update, and I'm delighted to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for Jonathan? Okay, thank you, Jonathan, for that report. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Ellen.
Sure. I've been monitoring the chat, we do have quorum now, so we are good to go back to items that's voted. We've just reposted, or Melissa has just reposted the link for attendance. So if you have recently entered the meeting, please check the chat and fill out that form so we can have a record of your attendance today. We will go back now to approval of the minutes. You should have received the minutes in an email a couple of days ago, and then again this morning there was a couple of corrections that Russ was kind enough to go ahead and make. I appreciate that. Thank you. So you should have the up-to-date minutes in your inbox now. So if hopefully you've had a chance to look over those minutes, and now that that correction has been made, we will open the floor for a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Eliza. I'll make a motion to approve the May minutes.
Thank you, Eliza. And thank you for clarifying it's May minutes. I did neglect to do that. So yes, it is the minutes for May. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, Jonathan has seconded the motion in the chat. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, type yes in the chat. No if you decline, and I don't know of any reason why someone would abstain from the minutes, but if you need to, that's okay too. Please abstain. All right, looks like the yeas have it. The minutes are approved. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the 2023-2024 HSAC meeting schedule. And this is an item that will need to be approved by the HSAC. And I've got Colin as the presenter for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a schedule that the executive committee agreed that would work and meet various deadlines. Wanted to share, whoops, hold on, wrong document. Pull up the right one here. Second. There we go. So this is sort of all of our meetings on our schedule, and normally our full HSAC meetings are at the end of the month. So we've proposed a schedule where we stick with the current schedule on the fourth, generally speaking, the fourth Thursday or fourth Wednesday of each month, except for a few exceptions where we have noted that third Wednesday of each month, except for November, December, and January, where we start running into Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Martin Luther King around those timeframes. So those are the dates that we are proposing that we change. Otherwise, the HSAC meetings would continue in the same pattern that they have for this year.
Just a quick note that the ASAC meetings are actually on the fourth Wednesday of the month. That's just a typo, but if this gets approved, we'll update this just so that it reflects the fourth Wednesday. So my apologies for that.
Thank you, Melissa. You reading my mind.
Sorry about that.
You were right the first time, Colin. It's the
Yeah, I was
fourth.
like, it's like these are the fourth. But I was looking at a calendar, I was like, maybe my math's wrong in my head. So except for the November, which is the 15th, December the 13th, and January the 17th. The other meetings, as you'll see on this, are executive committee, policy and planning, and performance management. And those meetings pretty much stay the same. There are a couple adjustments that needed to be made for July and September due to current staff schedules and vacations to make those work in July and September. Questions? I see Eliza, I think your hand was up first.
Yeah, just one quick other small edit that the March 20th is also the third Wednesday, so we should add an asterisk there, I believe.
We can do that. Or we can shift it to the 27th, which would keep it on the 4th.
Lloyd, you had a question?
Go ahead,
Good
Lloyd.
afternoon, Lloyd Schweiler, also with the Community Development Department. Just a clarifying point that December 13th would actually be the second Wednesday of December, the third one being December 20th, according to my calendars. So people may want to note that. I don't know if Melissa maybe had reason to add the March 20th meeting. I'm not sure when the Easter holiday falls in the springtime of 2024, but it could be I don't know, Melissa, you may have a note about that.
I don't see any holidays that would conflict with the fourth Wednesday. When we reviewed it as a team, I think we just had it up there and we didn't catch it right away. So I'm fine with changing it to the fourth Wednesday of March.
Yeah, we'll just keep it on the 27th. I think you're right, Melissa. I think it was just one of those things when we were looking at it, we just didn't catch it. Any other?
It looks like because our 2023 meeting was the third Wednesday in March, it just probably was the reason for that.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if not, then we will take a motion to approve this schedule with the changes that have been noted.
I move, Sharita.
Sharita's motion to approve. Need a second?
I second.
Shaisha Bell is seconding. All in favor, type yes in the chat. No, if you decline.
I second.
All right. And the schedule is approved. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the HUD COC NOFO priorities. This also is an item that we have to vote on today. And for this, we have Lloyd Schmeidler to present.
Good afternoon, Lloyd Schmeidler with the Community Development Department. We sent out, I believe, a memo with the recommended priority for the use of these continuum of care bonus funding in the upcoming 2023 homeless grants competition. We have been expecting about $100,000 COC bonus in 2022. HUD expanded the use of those funds to any eligible continuum of care activity. Prior to that, it had been restricted to permanent housing projects. In 2022, HUD allowed it to also be used for homeless management information system activities or other eligible activities under the COC interim rule. The Policy and Planning Committee considered the various priority and considered the recommendation of the department as the COC lead agency, and is recommending that the priority for the use of any COC bonus funds that the COC is eligible to apply for in this upcoming competition be for permanent supportive housing projects for dedicated plus participants, formerly homeless people that meet the definition of a dedicated plus. And for those who may be unfamiliar with dedicated plus, essentially would be people with a disability who would qualify as chronically homeless, but for a technicality of one kind or another. A common technicality is that sometimes people have been homeless for extended periods of time, but they do not meet the specific time requirements to qualify as chronic homelessness, as chronically homeless. HUD's definition of chronically homeless people is specifically that people have been homeless continuously for a year or longer, or they have had 4 or more episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years that cumulatively total a full year of homelessness. A dedicated plus participant might be someone who had been chronically homeless, had been in permanent supportive housing for a year or two, and then returned to homelessness. According to the strict definition, they would have to wait for a year of chronic homelessness before they could be eligible for permanent supportive housing again. The dedicated plus participant would not be. So that is introduction. I don't know if Policy and Planning Committee Chair wishes to add any additional comments. Madam Chair, back to you.
All right, thank you. Excuse me.
Do anybody have any questions about that recommendation? This is Sharita, Chair of Policy and Planning.
I'm not seeing any hands or questions. Nothing in the chat. Okay, as we said at the beginning, this is an item that requires a vote. So we will take a motion to accept the recommendation as stated.
If Policy and Planning made the recommendation, can I make the motion?
I think so.
Yeah, you can make the motion.
Can I
Sherita.
move that we accept the recommendation as presented by staff and the recommendation of our Policy and Planning Subcommittee?
Thank you, Charita. Do we have a second?
This is Eliza. I will second.
Thank you, Eliza. We have a motion and a second. Please put your vote in the chat. Yes, if you approve, no, if you disapprove, or abstain if you need to abstain. Okay, looks like the motion has carried. So it is approved. All right. The next item on our agenda is the COC NOFO and special NOFO debriefing. And this is information only. So our next presenter for that again is Lloyd Schmeidler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, could you confirm that you can see that slideshow?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. So title slide. The outline of the presentation will have a few introductory comments about what HUD's debriefing documents are, and then move into second and third sections. You'll recall that we had two COC competitions in calendar year 2022, one a special notice of funding opportunity for unsheltered homelessness, and then the annual competition. So annually, HUD provides COC lead agencies a document that summarizes a COC scores on a collaborative application. That document essentially has three sections. HUD provides the detail of select high priority questions, and then a scoring summary table of the general sections of the application, and then a table showing how the COC score compared to other COCs across the nation. The overall information in the debriefing document can be helpful to help COCs look at areas they are strong in, as well as areas of the collaborative application that they might consider working to improve. So the special NOFO to address unsheltered homelessness, we did not score nearly as well as we had hoped to. This table is, the first three columns on this table are straight from the debriefing document that we received from HUD. The last column, this score as a percentage of the maximum score, is a column we added to give you some sense for how within that particular row or that category, scoring category, what percentage of the possible score that we were able to obtain. So you can see that also by the maximum score, this was a 100-point scale, and 70% of the overall score was based, you may recall, on a 15-page, maximum 15-page continuum of care plan to address unsheltered homelessness. We scored well in the first three sections, but did not score as well as we had hoped with our COC plan. The overall scores for this unsheltered set aside shows that the score required to be funded was 76.91. We were well short of that, and we're more in the middle, and it was very competitive scoring. There were I don't recall how many COCs across the nation were funded. In North Carolina, we do know that only the Northwest continuum of care, which is a more rural continuum of care, was funded, and the balance of state continuum of care also received a large grant. They were cooperating with the state of North Carolina state government to implement the plan that they have to address unsheltered and rural homelessness. There was a portion of the NOFO that was specifically for rural communities. But Durham did not qualify to be able to apply for that portion since we're largely an urban county. Don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time talking about the special NOFA, although we're happy to discuss, entertain questions about it. Want to spend a bit more time with the annual competition debriefing document because it provides, from our point of view, more information for, particularly for future planning efforts within the Durham continuum of care. This table presents, again, the first three columns are straight from HUD's second section, where it shows how we scored on the general categories within the continuum of care. The continuum of care collaborative application was scored on a 200-point scale, and the maximum scores possible are listed in by section in the second column. Durham score is in the third column, shows how we did on each of those sections, and then again the score as a percentage of the possible points is listed in the final column. And so what's notable here, particularly when you look at how Durham did in our collaborative application in each of the sections. What stands out perhaps is that we didn't get any points for coordination with housing and healthcare. And that is largely because we didn't have any project applications, at least that were funded, that were a application that demonstrated coordination between housing and healthcare. The other notable area where we were weaker than we would have liked to have been would have been under system performance, our second lowest area, and then thirdly the kind of a subsection of the HUD's emphasis on coordination and engagement. I did note HUD scored us gave us a lower score in coordination and engagement if you put 1C and 1D together. We scored about 72% in that area. I looked at our score for coordination and engagement in the 2021 competition, and in that competition we received 66.5 of 74.5 possible points, or an overall percentage of about 84%. So scored us lower in 2022 than it did in 2021. But in some of the other areas we scored quite well. And in terms of comparing our scores to other COCs, gratefully our score of 136.5 was was strong enough to get all of our tier 1 priority projects funded. However, we did not get any expansion funds or expansion projects funded in the 2022 competition. The weighted mean score is an adjustment that HUD makes to the overall COC score based on the size of the continuum of care relative, I think, to the number of people experiencing homelessness within the COC. And so we added Durham COC score as a percentage of the weighted mean. And the weighted mean, HUD also points out, is a score that suggests that if COC scored above that number in 2022 of 162.25, they were more likely to get expansion projects or tier 2 projects funded. If they scored below that weighted mean, they were less likely to get additional projects funded. So that's kind of the significance of that weighted mean score, which is somewhat higher than the overall median score.
Lloyd, we have a couple of questions in the chat, if it's okay. You go
Okay,
back,
yep, we can entertain them at this point.
yeah. There's a question about what does system performance mean in this case?
Great question. System performance in this section concerns Durham's overall performance on 6 of the 7 system performance measures that HUD looks at annually. We made a presentation to the HSAC and the COC earlier in the year about our system performance. That system performance is measured annually based on the performance for the federal fiscal year, for the fiscal year that ends September 30th every year. Some examples of system performance measures that go into this score are the percentages of people returning to homelessness, the numbers of first-time homeless people, the employment and income growth among people in our COC-funded permanent housing projects, retention of housing by people in our permanent housing projects as well. Those are some of the system performance measures that are included in this area.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Ross? Okay. Also, Trita asked, is this table state specific or national? We were on the next slide when she put that in the chat, so I don't know if it was directly for that or not.
Okay, this if it's relative to this screen, this slide, this does show the national national summary showing that the highest score of any COC across the country was 188. The lowest score was 53.5. The median of all the COCs across the nation, and there's approximately 400 continuum of care across the nation that HUD funds. All of the geography of the United States, and I think many of the territories do have a continuum of care established to help address the needs of people experiencing homelessness in those communities. More rural areas throughout the country are often covered what's called the balance of state continuum of care, like the North Carolina balance of state continuum of care that covers the 79 counties within North Carolina that are not included in a more local or regionally focused continuum of care. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And one other question I've been asked, but Colin has answered that question in the chat. So, Trita?
So Lloyd, do we know kind of where we sit based on in our state? It's specifically how we look at like other as far as other COCs in the state of North Carolina, and then do we know where our score sits as far as areas that are or locations that are similar to Durham in urbanness or resources, kind of where we sit to just have an idea of what that 136.5 really like looks like for North Carolina?
That's a great question. Let me try to do some research on that. We did not receive scores of the other COCs within the state. HUD does publish all the COC awards, so we can look at how much the other COCs across the state are receiving and which projects are being funded by HUD. We don't necessarily, unless the COC is publicly releasing their debriefing document, we don't get the scores of the individual COCs. I'm not sure. I don't believe there's any mechanism at the state level to compile the scores from across the state that I'm aware of. But I'll try to check into that and see if I can get some additional information for you on that question. It's a good question. All right.
Thank you. I was like, thank you for indulging questions. I know you still have more of your presentation.
Absolutely. A couple of,
Commissioner Carter did have one quick question on the previous slide about the coordination with housing and healthcare, and wondering if we had scored higher on that in the past.
this is a new scoring category. We have not scored higher in the past. Basically, there were 7 points for, of the 14 were for a project that included housing vouchers or housing subsidies from a source beyond the continuum of care or beyond the ESG funds, Emergency Solutions Grant funds. And then the other 7 points were for projects that would have had a partnership with a healthcare organization that was also contributing to the project. So I think there's opportunities as we think about improving overall system performance. HUD is continuing to encourage us to look at partnerships and engagement with other community partners. You may recall that this was also a key component of the plan that COCs were asked to develop for the special NOFO. Want to spend a couple slides looking at specific questions. Mentioned that one section of the HUD's debriefing document takes select or high priority questions from the NOFO and gives the COCs score on those. A couple slides here. This one shows score specific questions where we did not score particularly well. Rapid rehousing beds, HUD basically is awarding points for annual increases in the number of rapid rehousing beds that are listed on the housing inventory count, which that number is counted.
But what does that mean, Lord? What does rapid rehousing beds, what does that mean?
That
Like we have bridge housing or something like that? Is that
Well-
what that's referring to?
It looks at all of our rapid rehousing projects, how many beds were occupied on the night of the point in time count or on the night of the HIC, right? So if you have increasing numbers of rapid rehousing beds, you get points. If your numbers are declining, you don't get points. We could look at the NOFO. I don't know if there's any. I think it's pretty much an all or nothing kind of thing, so that if you are increasing the number of beds, you get more points, or you get the maximum points possible. If your number is declining, you get 0 points. Our numbers are declining. They should go up in 2024, but we're likely to get 0 points on this again in 2023 because I think in 2022 we had about 180 rapid rehousing beds of people occupying a bed that was funded with rapid rehousing support. In January of this year, I think we only had like 92 or 95, something like that. We know some of that is because the people that have been in rapid rehousing have increased needs for some financial support and other support. Right. 1D8 is largely around a response to the COVID pandemic. But we still have opportunities for involvement there. Bed coverage rate 2A5 looks at the beds that are dedicated for occupancy by homeless or formerly homeless people in the case of permanent housing that are being tracked in your homeless management information system. Right now, most of our beds are tracked in the HMIS. However, HUD includes in our housing inventory count both HUD VASH, HUD VA supportive housing beds, as well as a new category of other permanent housing that's used for people coming out of homelessness, being the emergency housing vouchers. Both of those bed types are federally subsidized, but HUD does not require that the beds be used or be tracked in the HMIS. But when it comes to determining our bed coverage rate, HUD looks at whether those beds are using the HMIS or not. And as a result, we only got 2 of 4 points. It's, 4 points of 200 points is 2%. So, but it gives you an idea again of kind of how the scoring works. We talked earlier about the system performance measures 2C1 through 2C5. HUD, in terms of the overall scoring of these items, looks at the numbers that we are providing, how well we're doing just in terms of the numbers, but it also considers the strategies that we are describing in the narrative in the collaborative application. So it looks at both of those things together in providing the scoring in these areas. So wanted to give that, but I also wanted to highlight, and this is some new, I shared some of this, I think, with Chair Tripp, some of this presentation with Chair Tripp and I think Vice Chair Matthews earlier. Do want to mention as well that there are some sections of the collaborative application that we scored well on. All right, so we don't want to lose sight of some things that we're doing well at. And this slide, I think a future item on the agenda is talking a little bit further about our housing first evaluation that was conducted earlier in the year. And so these are things that we can be feel good about. I don't know if there's any questions or comments about that. Final slide of some key takeaways. We do have some strengths in terms of our housing first implementation. Our structure is generally good. HUD recognizes our inclusive structure in issues with racial equity, and the conduct of the local competition is kind of reflected on the previous slide. But areas for improvement certainly are around system performance, coordination with housing and healthcare, and then the section on coordination and engagement. Madam Chair, any further questions, comments?
The only other question in the chat is from Charita, who asked, how can we do some intentional work around housing and healthcare coordination?
That I would say is one of the $1 million questions.
I mean, we have as part of the partnership, we have a health and housing subcommittee. They're trying to figure out ways that they can help or they can work or what they can do. I don't know if we can figure out how to leverage that working group. I'm a member of that working group to see if they can help us do some work around those things and figure out how we engage our healthcare entities and, get creative on what we're doing or how we're doing it, because I feel like it's a lot of things around healthcare and housing we are doing. We just don't do a good job of highlighting it, I think, in a way that we can show HUD what we're doing. And we just need to figure out how to, one, be smart about what the things that we are doing, but two, also figure out how to push that needle a little bit further.
And Sharita, I think, oops, sorry, are you done, Sharita?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you're right on both of those. One, there may be things that we are doing that we haven't necessarily been able to articulate in a way that HUD understands it. What we have gleaned from some of the from some of the things that we've heard or seen is communities who scored well in that had very intentional projects where their mental health provider, their hospital system, and their homeless system all said, hey, we're going to do something different. We are going to do something above what we're currently doing, and we are going to intentionally set aside a separate pot, a new pot of resources to meet this particular need in this particular way. When we put together our MOUs for our special NOFO on how to help the unsheltered, a lot of what we could get is we'll continue doing what we're doing. We'll continue to serve people in our emergency room with no insurance. We'll continue to serve people with Medicaid who show up as homeless or have no insurance in the homeless population. But we weren't able to sort of create that. Here's this specialized niche that here is a project and here is a separate intervention for people who are specifically experiencing homelessness that ties all three of those mental health, physical health, and homelessness resources together. And that's the piece where it's going to take some time because we're going to need to get Duke, Alliance, the city, the county, and Alliance. Duke, Lincoln. The three health groups and the city and county around the table to sort of say, okay, what pot of money and who can put what pool of money into what to create it. And yet we have Project Access, which does receive money and does some of this. Is there a way that we can be better articulate how some of Project Access assists this? Perhaps that will help strengthen that score. But in the long run, we do need to expand upon what we currently have in place. Does that answer your question?
It answers my question. It just frustrates me because a lot of that stuff that the things that I do every day, and some of my colleagues that are on this call and have been on this call in the past, we're doing a lot of healthcare, housing related things. And I don't think the zero is reflective of all the work that's getting done. So
Lloyd and I agree with that. And some of the things that we wrote in our special NOFO, we were shocked that we got 0 points on because we thought we had articulated a pretty good plan, especially when TROSA wrote a very specific NOFO about what they were going to do for unsheltered slots for people who met their medical qualifications to come in. And we were kind of shocked that we had an MOU that specifically got to it. We got 0 points. So I think you're right, Sharita. If we can find a way to better document how the work you do and how does that tie to health and homelessness and create some outcomes, I think if we can work on figuring out how to better highlight that in this year's application, we might score a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll build on that if I might. I pulled up the 2022 NOFO in terms of this section, in terms of leveraging housing resources. The 7 points I'm quoting now from the NOFO says, COCs will receive full points for demonstrating that they've applied for at least one permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing project that utilizes housing subsidies or subsidized housing units not funded through the COC or ESG programs. For the 7 points for leveraging healthcare resources, it says COCs must demonstrate through a written commitment from a healthcare organization that the value of assistance being provided is at least an amount that is equivalent to 25% of the funding being requested for the project, which will be covered by the healthcare organization. Acceptable forms of commitment of formal written agreements and must include the value of the commitment and the dates the healthcare resources will be provided. So there's a special sentence also around substance abuse programs, which I won't read, but additional specificity on that.
Thank you, Lloyd. Ricky, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Lloyd kind of addressed it. I was wondering if for the collaborative application, if it had to go beyond like name dropping, like we work with Project Access and Lincoln Community Healthcare for the homeless, and actually, demonstrating that there are written agreements with these organizations to provide XYZ services and explaining how that factors into our system. Also, I wanted to know, did we have a grant writer for this, or did lead agency staff complete the collaborative application?
Lead agency staff have been completing the collaborative application for as far back as I can remember. With input from the community, you'll recall we've been working to try to get input on the sections from the community, and we'll do that again, certainly as we move into the 2023 competition.
Thank you. Russ?
Sure. I guess trying to figure out how to word my question. Maybe this is a process piece. I think we've had some prior meetings where we kind of discussed what's the role of the HSAC, what's the role of the COC, what's the role of the lead agency. So I guess my question here is along those lines of like, where does accountability for this performance lie? And I don't, and all of us is not the answer. I mean, I get that, but what I guess what I'm driving is, where does it ultimately lie in terms of figuring these pieces out? Is it the individual agencies to read these things in detail and know how to write their part into this differently? Is it planning and policies? Is it the HSAC functioning as the COC? Is it the lead agency? Like, who's ultimately responsible for coming? I mean, as an agency, if we're not performing well, performance management is going to put us on probation, and we've got to come up with a performance improvement plan. So maybe my question more simply is, who's responsible for the performance improvement plan? So that we really identify what the core issues are. Is it writing? Is it, articulating the relationships, performance pieces? How do we really drill down and know where that accountability, I don't know if it's lays or lies, somebody can privately correct my grammar there. Where does it rest?
So let me take help sort of walk through this. And I know you don't want to hear the answer is all of us, but the answer is all of us in different levels. So on system performance measures, for instance, that's where providers have to really hit those COC established benchmarks. If COC, shelter, street outreach, emergency, rapid rehousing fail to meet those benchmarks, we as a team, as a community, lose points because one part or multiple parts don't hit the benchmarks that are established by HUD. So there's an accountability there, which performance management works on. Then the COC application, we as the lead agency, the city as the lead agency, is responsible for writing and submitting the lead agency, soliciting input from providers, because there's things that we just don't know because we're not in the day-to-day trenches. We can pull data, but then when we see the data, we have to say, all right, does this make sense to providers? So there's iterations that we go through. The other piece that we as the lead agency, when you write this, the NOFO itself is kind of a two-part document. The first part is we're telling HUD, here's all the stuff we did in the last year. And we get graded on how well we did in the last, between the application cycles. The other piece of this document is, here's what we're going to do on the go forward basis. So when they go to scoring, they're looking at, what did you say you were going to do in the last one? Because you're writing about it in part one to say, here's what we accomplished. So we also have a part that after we submit this application, there's a piece that we as the lead agency need to be going back and saying, hey, we talked about these partnerships. Are these partnerships happening? Is Durham Tech serving X number of people in the homeless system? Is, ABC organization doing XYZ that we talked about in the application? And if not, we as a lead agency are supposed to be kind of doing that. The challenge that we've had is we've had COVID, we've had obscene amounts of money that we've been drowning in, and we've been short-staffed. The city council approved us to hire additional staff in our last, for this fiscal year that's just ending. And the homeless team is bringing on our last full-time staff members, starting with us on July 17th. And that position will really be focused on the COC collaborative application, the ESG collaborative application, because it's not just a 12-week-a-year job of doing this. It's really, as soon as you finish writing it, you really start working and planning for your next one and verifying what it sort of using it as your, I don't want to say a strategic plan, but a piece of it is, these are what we've told HUD we have to do with these COC dollars, and sort of tracking and making sure we do it. And Lloyd has been doing an amazing job juggling that, plus juggling, 6 or 7 other contracts that he's been managing on top of this. So it just, we do have some responsibility, and I think we will start seeing we as the city, as lead agency, more intimately involved with a lot of the performance management and trying to bring about these partnerships and better document what's happening on the ground so that we can score better. Does that answer your question, Russ, a little bit? As I like to say, the COC NOFO is an ultimate team and ultimate individual competition. As the individual competition, Housing for New Hope, Urban Ministries, Families Move Forward, those who get funded by this have to compete and are ranked in order of how they do. And if we as a team, as a system, don't score high enough, if they're at the bottom of the barrel and HUD runs out of money, the person at the bottom of that list is going to lose funding. So it's really a team sport and an individual sport that we as a collective have to really move forward. And that's one of the things that we are committed to doing, is looking at our policies and procedures, and are we using the right interventions in the right time to help get our rapid rehousing numbers back where they need to be. If we saw a drop in those, well, some of that's due to landlords. Some of that is due to serving the highest barrier folks who needed really long-term deep subsidies, which meant, guess what? There's not a whole lot of turnover. Not a whole lot of people coming into that when you kind of commit to helping 25 or 50 people because they need 2 years of assistance. And we can't keep doing that if we expect to, we have to allocate our resources correctly and figure out how to better navigate these and bring in some additional funding sources.
Thank you, Colin. Are there any more questions for Lloyd? Okay. Thank you for that discussion. It's very informative. We're going to move on to our next item, which is HSAC goals discussion, debrief, and next steps. If you'll remember, in our May meeting, we continued a discussion, or we've had a discussion around goals using Jamboard to give everyone an opportunity to provide, to give us some input on what we thought about, what we know about goals, and how we think we can work and improve. I'm going to ask our Vice Chair, Eliza Matthew, to take the floor now and continue with that discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Chair Tripp shared, in the May meeting, we had our Jamboard activity. Thank you to those that participated in the meeting last month, and also those that filled out the form that Melissa shared out. For those that haven't participated and still want to and are interested in participating, it's not too late. The form to participate is still open, and I'm hoping somebody can drop that link in the chat for us. That form around the HSAC goals discussion will be open until the close of business on Wednesday, July 5th. So you have about one more week if you're interested in filling that form out and offering your insights to the group. Something to note is we did say and have a request for folks that are interested in being a part of a task force group that can look at kind of overall what was shared, what are themes, what are some recommendations that can come back to the full HSAC. As a part of that survey, there's a question at the end where you can indicate your interest. If you've already participated but not had a chance yet to indicate your interest, you can email Melissa and let her know that you're interested. So thanks, Ruby, for popping that Smartsheet form in the chat. So if you are so inclined, you can go ahead and open it up and work on it right after this meeting. Or you can leave it open in a tab and remember in the morning. So thanks for your participation in that. To continue threading what was captured in this conversation so far, we wondered what possible alignment existed between the opportunities to improve and what we just discussed with the COC NOFO score, and this facilitated conversation around goals and responses to questions, particularly focusing on the responses to the 2 questions from our last meeting around goals that were, how are we achieving this and what can we improve on? I'm going to quickly share my screen. So this document, I basically just took, copy and pasted people's responses that had come in so far in the Jamboard across some 3 priority areas that were just discussed: coordinate with housing and healthcare, system performance, and coordination and engagement, to look for some possible alignment and themes that we're seeing across the 2. 2 things that stood out were mental health resources across the board and landlord engagement, but also there were some particular elevated themes within each of these categories. So within coordinate with housing and healthcare, again, mental health resources, appointment support, discharge resources and process, childcare vouchers, and white flag options. In system performance, workforce development, job training, employment, and entry point. And then coordination and engagement, things that elevated were landlord engagement, data sharing, strategic planning, DPS collaborations, and equitable processes. So just wanted to capture a quick kind of possible overlap in what folks are saying. These are things that we are achieving and things that we can improve on. One quick note is the way I distinguished which sticky notes came from which questions is with the asterisk. So the ones with the asterisk are ones that we're saying that we are achieving this well from the activity that we did last month. So trying to capture opportunities to improve on what we're doing well, and also opportunities to try some new things. So just wanted to offer that update and share that we are continuing to think about the work that was done last month and want to continue to thread that as we move forward, and are thankful for your participation in the forum if you've not done so already, and also really thankful for folks that have indicated their interest in being a part of the work moving forward.
Thank you, Liza. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from anyone? Well, this is not the end. As she said, the survey is still open until July 5th, and we will certainly be looking at the group to work on this, what we're hearing from the Jamboard sessions and from the survey. So we're looking forward to continuing to move forward with this in the future. All right, we have one more item on our agenda, and that is the Housing First presentation. And again, we have Lloyd Schmeidler to bring that for us.
Good afternoon, once more. No slides for this presentation. We primarily want this opportunity to be available to the organizations that participated in the cross COC Housing First evaluation process to give their perspectives and insights to the HSAC and the COC. By way of introduction and kind of reminder of what we were doing, we were attempting to assess and document how well our COC funded permanent housing projects are implementing housing first best practices and standards in their projects. And the method we decided to use across the 3 COCs of Durham County, Orange County, and Wake County, Raleigh, were to form three-person evaluation teams at pretty much through each project. And so, for example, they worked out that the teams that were formed in Durham and Orange County would evaluate projects in Wake County, and Wake County being a larger metropolitan area, had 8 projects that were up for evaluation or eligible to be evaluated, and combined Durham and Orange County also had 8. So we worked to form those teams and to provide some training, an overview of what the best standards are for housing first with HUD TA assistance. And we randomly assigned the teams to evaluate teams in the same kind of project type, so that if a team was implementing a rapid rehousing project in Durham, for example, we would attempt to assign them to evaluate a rapid rehousing project in Wake County. The tool we used for the evaluation was a document called the Housing First Standards Assessment Tool that was first released by our partners at HUD in 2017 and has been updated once or twice since then. And we worked with our HUD TA provider to adapt the tool for the time constraints that we had within our 3 COCs. The 3 areas that we were basically evaluating around Housing First were access and input into the Housing First project, the housing project, how leases work within the project, and then the services that were provided. And so the evaluation teams in site visits, many on-site visits were done, some visits were done virtually. Basically, we asked the teams to evaluate whether the projects were saying they implement Housing First, whether their policies and procedures for the project actually document that they're implementing Housing First, and then whether project participants within the project could testify that the projects actually were implementing Housing First best practices. So that, with that, by way of introduction, I sent out a couple questions and want to turn this over to representatives from Alliance Housing for New Hope and Urban Ministries to provide some feedback. I invited them to share within their projects what elements of Housing First are they implementing well, and what Housing First elements would they hope to strengthen within their projects moving forward, and then kind of evaluating our feedback about the process, what went well about this COC evaluation process, and what aspects should be improved going forward if the 3 COCs wanted to do something like this in the future. I'm going to invite the projects that were involved with this and the organizations to take a few minutes to provide some feedback to the group. Going in alphabetical order, I want to call on Tracy Stone-Dino from Alliance to share from the Alliance's perspectives.
Hi there, good afternoon. Overall, I thought with this being our first effort to evaluate it from a regional perspective, that it went well. I think we learned a lot, not only in terms of what the city of Durham is doing, but the other counties within that make up the triangle are doing as it relates to COC funded projects. I think we're all striving to meet the demand to house individuals who are chronically homeless, as well as provide housing along the continuum for those individuals, whether it's emergency housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing. I think we're all challenged with the inventory across the triangle as it relates to the number of affordable housing, subsidized housing for the people that we serve, along with dealing with their barriers to enter into housing and to sustain those. So I think it was a really good exercise overall to get input and learn more about the various programs that are taking place across the triangle. I think if we were to repeat it, and I think this is part of our debriefing that we had earlier this spring, that maybe the timing, and it's never going to be an ideal time to do such an undertaking such as this and coordinated across 3 counties, but I think in the future, maybe to possibly lengthen it out a little bit to give more time. I think a lot of the meetings took place virtually, which was really good and convenient to be able to do, but also it was a challenge for some of our program participants as well, to be able to not only have that access, but coordinate that with them as well, because of just computer literacy and being able to access the means to gather and log on for an online meeting. But overall, I thought it was a good experience, and I'm sure we all learned a little bit, not only about how we can improve our processes, but how other organizations are being successful in serving the people that we serve across the region who are faced with challenging their housing, their homelessness, and trying to gain entry through coordinated intake processes and dealing with barriers to housing.
Thank you, Tracy. Want to invite Shante Edison with Housing for New Hope to also share from Housing for New Hope's perspective.
Good afternoon, everybody. So just based on the cross COC evaluations for this year, what we've learned as an agency is that we are doing a really good job of accepting clients despite their barriers, including the lack of income, justice involvement, poor rental history. And one of the things that we do here as an agency, we do background checks on our clients, but we don't necessarily use that as a tool to help the landlords. We use that as a tool to help our case managers identify how to alleviate some of those barriers with the clients that we're serving. Also, we are exceeding the threshold for housing clients in spite of their barriers. And part of that is because we have a dedicated housing location and navigation team. And this allows our case managers to focus on case management and actually helping clients to mediate or eliminate those barriers. One of the things that we have learned, and we are fully aware of it, that we need to strengthen is our client feedback loop. We are currently in the process of creating a client feedback loop. We have one of our interns working toward building that client feedback loop. She's doing amazing things, working with our departments to figure out the best way and the best questions to ask and how to engage our clients in that process. Just from our perspective, what could be improved, to Tracy's point, the timing probably can be improved, excuse me. One of the things that we struggled with as an agency was it being around point in time. And since we coordinated point in time this year, it was very difficult to do both things at once. And it seemed to be a lot at one time. Also, just making sure that agencies are intentional about planning for the evaluation and actually participating. I think we didn't get we didn't get information back from one agency. We had to kind of hunt them down for participation. This was an agency in Wake County, and that was kind of a challenge. What was good about this was we were able to gain insight and to learn what our partners are doing. And that was just a valuable learning experience and just a valuable networking experience as well. We discovered creative ways to implement programs. I know that I did art scoring with Alliance. And one of the things that I liked was their release of information. And I was like, this is really cool how can we use this tool here for Housing for New Hope? So things like that were very helpful. And I think one of the things that can be improved too is the questions for the participant interview. Some of them seem to be a little bit redundant, as well as some of the questions throughout the interview for staff, for the project, and for like HMIS. I think it's important to understand what information we're trying to collect, be trauma informed, and make sure that we're not asking the same questions different ways to essentially get the same responses. So I think a lot of times we got, we kind of already covered that, throughout the interview. So just being a little bit more thoughtful with the questions that are being asked.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Shantae. Appreciate that feedback as well. And Urban Ministries, Christine Morrow and Beverly McGill were involved in the process, and want to invite them to share.
Yes, hi. Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of Tracy. You know, I was very, very impressed with the meeting that we had at Interact Wake County. I mean, the building to me was immaculate. The different rooms and that part just blew me away because it was so clean and so immaculate. I'm really a stickler for cleanliness. But anyway, I like the different components that were involved in how they process their clients in, and they like from the beginning to the very end. And one of the things that I thought about while I was there or after I left was, you know, UMD, I think we do a very good job of what we do. We're a 30-day shelter, and I think we do very well case management wise and housing. We have 9 family rooms, and we have men and we have women. So we have a lot going on. So one of the things I think about is that occasionally, many times we have families that come in who are DMV victims, domestic violence. And I don't know a lot about, you know, what's available in Durham in terms of referring them to domestic violence shelters or anything like that. And I would like to know more if they are in Durham, and I'm sure they are. But the one in Wake County, I thought was like phenomenal. And I would love to have that same kind of service to offer the clients that come into UMD shelter. And I know we're different counties, and I'm sure there's a lot going on that I don't know about funding wise and that type of thing. But I was like, it would be great if a family came in and I could call them up, Interact, and say, hey, we have family here and it really needs, you know, the services that you offer, but I don't know how we cross that county line. But overall, I was impressed. I think they're doing a great job. And I know that UMD is doing a great job with the resources and the time frame that we have to work with our clients as well. I think Christine would like to say something as well.
Yeah, our workforce department is a very good asset to us. They work with our clients while they're here. When they are housed, they will continue to work with them for several meetings with the COC Fresh Start clients. As long as they're enrolled in the program, they will continue to work with our clients about any of their work-related needs, which I feel is very important.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Shantae. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing your perspective and comments and insights into the process. Appreciate it very much. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and the information that you've provided. That's actually the last thing on the main items on our agenda. The next item on the agenda is announcements. So since we actually have time for this today, does anyone have any announcements that you'd like to bring?
Madam Chair, if I could just share a quick update about the Carver Creek situation.
Please.
The group took really important action a couple of months ago to provide a letter of support or endorsement of the idea, both to the city and county. I'm delighted to say, delighted is probably the understatement of the year. After a lot of meetings with the city council and county commissioners and others, As of Monday night, we had approval from the city and the county to jointly fund the full purchase of Carver Creek. So we have reserved as a community those units. That of course opens up the opportunity for us as a community to create another 50 units on that property and create really transformational supportive housing campus that interestingly enough may go a long way toward addressing some of those pieces that we were talking about with the NOFO earlier in healthcare and housing and things. One part of a larger set of strategies for that. So just wanted to say a word of thanks. A number of you have been there shoulder to shoulder with us pushing on this. And we have just had extraordinary support from across the community, and also grateful for great media coverage that a number of people helped for us to arrange. So I just want to end with that celebration today for everyone's just great support. The big work's ahead. We will close on the property in late August. We're hoping to plan something in September. I'm not sure what the equivalent of a groundbreaking is for taking ownership, but we'll come up with something and make sure everyone gets the invite for September time span. Thank you, ma'am.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for letting us know about that, Russ. I don't know if you could see all of the celebrations and claps and hearts and everything that came across the screen at that time, but and the great comments in the chat as well. So thank you for letting us know about that. Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of updates regarding the city's request for proposals that closed on June 9th. We are beginning the review process of those 4 proposals that were submitted, and the review committee is working to review those proposals. We hope to develop funding recommendations for the city by the end of July. By way of reminder to our homeless housing providers, the state's emergency solutions grant application process is open through July 11th. So another 13 days from 2 weeks from yesterday, it will close on July 11th. We are awaiting HUD's continuum of care notice of funding opportunity for 2023. HUD has not yet finalized the amount of money that we're eligible to apply for, but chances are good. We believe that HUD will be releasing the NOFO by the end of July with a deadline, hopefully not before September 30th, hopefully after September 30th. But in any case, we will do our best to develop a strong application for those funds. And thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Any other announcements? I have one quick one. Janine Gordon has been the HSAC representative from the Department of Social Services for some time. She is retiring. Her last day is this Friday. She has identified someone else from Social Services to take her seat in her stead, and that the executive committee will discuss that in July and bring that to the Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Durham, the DSS seat is just a county, is a standing seat. It's not something we have to vote on, but we would still approve that seat and bring it to you for information in the August meeting to let you know who that is. Okay, our next, with that in mind, our next meeting is August 23rd. Which is the 4th Wednesday. We will not be meeting in July, so you have a month off. But we are looking forward to seeing you again in August. At that time, we will have some transitions and some votes for some new offices or new officers. Go ahead, Lloyd.
By way of reminder, I do believe we will be planning to conduct an email vote earlier in August for the state ESG funding recommendations that will be developed by the Performance Management Committee. The deadline for the submission of our regional application and the project applications is August 21st. So we'll need to get those funding recommendations approved via email. So be on the lookout for information about that.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. And so when you get that email, please go ahead and respond to it as quickly as possible so they can get those votes in and take care of what they need to take care of to get that information where it needs to go. Okay, any other announcements before we adjourn? All right, well, I will take a motion to adjourn.
This is Angela Holmes. I'm sorry, I'm just now joining. I had another training today, but I'm sorry I missed it, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Well, thank you, Angela. We're glad you made it anyway. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Hey y'all, this is Alicia Thompson from the VA. I will second that motion to adjourn. You guys have a great summer break.
All right, thank you, Alicia. And I'll third that. Definitely have a great summer break, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.